After preparing dinner and exiting the kitchen, I glanced at the clock and realized it was getting late. I placed the house key in my purse and departed, concerned that my children might think Mama forgot to pick us up from tuition. With this thought in mind, I hurried toward their tuition center. The most direct route to the center passed through the woods. After a brief walk, I arrived at the tuition center, where I was greeted by my children, who were delighted to see me and expressed their joy. I collected my children and began our journey home. Typically, I would take a straightforward path, but as darkness was approaching, I opted for a less familiar route. On our way back, we passed by an old villa. My son remarked, "Mom, my friends have told me frightening stories about the old villa, and I am scared," while glancing toward the structure. I reassured him that his friends were merely sharing tales and that there was nothing to fear. However, deep down, I was aware of the villa's past memories I preferred not to confront. We continued walking toward our home. Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep, I found myself reflecting on the memories associated with the villa, recalling the days I spent there with my parents and siblings. This story dates back 30 years when I was a child. My name is Alina, and I lived in this villa with my 3 siblings and our parents. My father purchased this villa at my mother's request. The day our father acquired the villa, my siblings and I were filled with joy. The villa was 2 stories tall, featuring a large terrace, a swimming pool, a beautiful garden, and a garage. My sisters and I shared a room on the 2nd floor, while my brother slept adjacent to our parents on the 1st floor. After we finished moving our belongings into our respective rooms, we gathered for a meal in the dining room before retiring for the night, exhausted from our efforts. It wasn't long after we settled in that I heard a knock on the door. Initially, I thought it was a figment of my imagination, but when I heard it again, I decided to investigate. Upon opening the door completely, I was startled to find a black cat in the middle of the corridor. The moonlight reflected off its eyes, giving them an eerie glow which frightened me, prompting a scream. My sisters rushed to my side, only to tease me upon discovering that my fright was due to a cat. Strangely, when I looked back, the cat had vanished. I dismissed it as a trick of my imagination and returned to sleep. As the weekend approached, my sisters and I were in our room, engaged in late-night gossip, when we heard voices emanating from the TV lounge. Since our parents were long asleep, we found this peculiar and decided to investigate the source of the sound. Upon entering the TV lounge, we discovered that the noise seemed to be coming from the kitchen. When we peered into the kitchen, we were met with the sight of the same black cat staring back at us from the countertop. It leaped down and darted into the next room, disappearing into the shadows. We noticed that the stove was on, and a distinct aroma indicated that something was cooking. I stepped forward to turn off the stove and, feeling frightened, we retreated to our room to sleep. The following day, when we recounted this incident to our mother, she became quite upset and admonished us to go to bed earlier at night, expressing disbelief at our story. One evening, my sisters and I were seated in the living room with our mother, engaged in conversation, while our younger brother and father had already retired for the night. Suddenly, our mother glanced toward the staircase, sensing the presence of a shadow. She speculated that it might be the shadow of my younger brother and asked me to go upstairs to check if he had awakened and needed assistance. Upon hearing her request, we all looked up and noticed the silhouette of a small child. However, when I ascended the stairs and found no one there, I was filled with fear and promptly informed my mother. She fell silent after listening to my account. A few days later, we attended my cousin's wedding for 3 days, and upon our return home, it appeared as though someone had tidied up the house. Everything sparkled as if polished, the bathrooms were immaculate, and the kitchen was filled with a delightful aroma. This phenomenon began to occur daily throughout our home, and a black cat began to roam the premises, sometimes resting in the kitchen and at other times in the bathroom. Then, one night, a terrifying incident transpired that compelled us to leave the villa. At some point during the night, my mother awoke to the sound of voices emanating from the roof. Assuming that my sisters were up there conversing, she ascended the stairs to reprimand us. However, upon reaching the roof, she was horrified by the sight before her. A group of individuals dressed in black gathered around a fire, engaged in an unsettling ritual. Their voices were chilling, and their faces were obscured. Terrified by the scene, my mother fled downstairs but stumbled and lost consciousness. My father, alerted by the noise, rushed to her side and lifted her, deeply concerned for her well-being. Once she regained her composure, she recounted the entire incident to him. In response, he decided we should leave the home immediately. We later discovered that what we had initially perceived as a cat was, in fact, a ghost.